survivors flee from walkers after the end of the world. Hello all, this is Jacobson and this is a brief retelling of the 8th and 9th episodes of the 2nd season of the zombie series The Walking Dead. You can see the previous episodes at the links in the video description. Thank you so much for your participation and 500 subscribers. Hopefully we'll keep it up and by the next video we'll have 600 subscribers. Once this video gets 100 likes, I will release the next installment. Enjoy watching it. Emotions run high after the barn massacre. Beth hurries over to the body of her mother, Annette, to mourn, but she is still alive and tries to grab Beth. Andrea saves Beth by driving a scythe through the zombified Annette's head. As the Green family walks back to the house, Shanika says Herschel of knowing Sophia's whereabouts, but Herschel denies knowing that she was in the barn, speculating that Otis had likely put her there before he died. He then angrily orders Rick's group to leave the farm. Rick ridicules Shane for his actions, but Shane mocks Rick's failed diplomacy with Herschel and criticizes his decision to continue the search for Sophia. Carl talks to Lori about Sophia, saying that he wanted to be the one to find her alive, but thinks that Rick did the right thing and that he would have done the same in his place. The survivors decide to bury Sophia, Herschel's wife, and his stepson Sean, and burn the rest of the bodies. Rick seems to be questioning his own leadership capabilities, admitting to Lori his frustration that he had everyone searching for Sophia when she had died long ago. Tensions worsen between Shane and Dale. Carol refuses to attend Sophia's funeral, which angers Daryl. Herschel packs his wife's possessions in cardboard boxes and digs out an old flask from his wardrobe, searching for the means to cope with the reality that there is no cure and he had been hanging on to a fool's hope. After the funeral, Andrea and T-Dog pile corpses into Otis's truck, saying that Shane did what needed to be done. Dale protests, suggesting that a new problem with Herschel was created in the wake of resolving the safety concern of the barn walkers. Maggie asks Glenn if he would stay if the rest of his group were to leave, but Glenn is unsure on how to answer. Beth suddenly grows ill and collapses. She suffers from a fever and other serious symptoms and seems to be in some state of shock. The group looks for Herschel to care for Beth, but discover that he has vanished, leaving behind his empty flask as a clue. At Maggie's suggestion, Rick decides to look for Herschel at the local bar and takes Glenn as backup. Shane is washing up at a water pump when Carol emerges from the forest, muddy and scratched. Shane cleans her cuts and apologizes for what had happened to Sophia. Meanwhile, Dale reveals to Lori that he believes Shane shot Otis and left him as bait to cover his escape, and that it's only a matter of time before he kills someone else. En route to town, Glenn confides to Rick that Maggie told him that she loved him. Rick says that they need more good things like that in their lives and that he should embrace those moments. Beth's condition creates concern, prompting Lori to send someone to search for Rick and Herschel. Daryl is the best choice, but he is still upset over the sacrifices he made in vain to collect Sophia and refuses to search for them. Lori decides to look for Rick herself, but while driving down the road, she accidentally hits a walker and crashes the car. At a bar in town, Rick discovers Herschel and tells him about Beth. Herschel reflects that he had robbed his daughters of a normal grieving process by giving them false hope and allowed himself to believe it too. Herschel also says that Rick must relate, saying he saw the same feeling wash over Rick's face when Sophia emerged from the barn, that there is no hope. Rick argues that nothing has really changed and people are counting on them to be strong, that it isn't about what they believe anymore, but about keeping their loved ones safe and giving them hope. This resonates with Herschel, who finishes his drink and decisively puts down his glass. They are interrupted when the bar door opens and two strange men walk in, giving their names as Dave and Tony. Dave says that they've come from Philadelphia and had tried to seek refuge in Washington, D.C., but the roads were blocked, so they kept heading west. He also reveals that they encountered a soldier from Fort Benning who told them the base was overrun. He mentions they may plan on heading to Nebraska due to its low populations and high gun rate. The five men converse cordially at first, but the strangers become increasingly impatient when Rick's group will not divulge information about the Green farm. Tony begins barking threats, prompting Rick to jump to his feet with his hand on his gun. Seeing this, Dave tries to calm things down by laying his own gun on the bar and addressing Rick with a more reasonable tone. Dave tries to tell Rick he is desperate and needs a place to be safe, but Rick still refuses to divulge the farm's whereabouts, telling them it is full. He states that Nebraska is nice and they should go there instead. As Dave laughs at this remark, he reaches for his gun on the bar, but is promptly shot in the head by Rick. He then quickly pivots and shoots Tony twice in the chest before he can react, knocking him back against the wall. As he slides to the floor, Rick quickly strides across the room and, standing over Tony, executes him with a third bullet to the head. As the smoke clears, Herschel and Glenn stand alongside Rick, the gravity of what's just happened settling over them. At this time on the farm, Shane and the T-Dog are dumping the bodies of the slain walkers into a pile and burning them afterwards. Lori unconscious after a car accident. She regains consciousness just as a walker is forcing its head and arms through the cracked windshield of the car. Lori stabs it in the face and escapes. She is then set upon by another walker which she kicks to the ground and hits across the head with a hubcap before shooting it. At the farm, the group is about to sit down to dinner and realize that Lori has disappeared. Daryl tells Carol that she had asked him to find Herschel, but he had refused. He speculates that Lori has gone on her own to town. Shane goes to find her, but when he arrives at the crash site all he finds is the two walkers Lori has killed. He eventually finds Lori still heading into town despite her accident. To get her to return to the farm, Shane lies to Lori by saying that Rick has already returned. When they return to the farm, Lori finds out that Shane lied and she confronts him, but he defends himself to the group, saying he was only protecting the baby, revealing to everyone, including Carl, that Lori is pregnant. Meanwhile in town, after killing Dave and Tony, Rick, Herschel, and Glenn are about to leave the carriage bar, but instead get pinned down in the saloon by Dave and Tony's group. Rick tells them that Dave and Tony pulled their guns out on them first, and that it was just a regretful mistake everyone can just walk away from, but the group begins to shoot at them to avenge their friends. Rick tells Glenn to check the back exit. As Glenn walks down some creaky steps and approaches the door, a shadow outside reaches for the handle and begins to twist it, but Glenn shoots through the glass and scares him off. Rick tells Herschel to cover Glenn while he makes a run for the car. A man named Sean, who was part of the group, sneaks up behind Glenn and attempts to shoot him, but Herschel shoots and wounds Sean, who starts crying out in pain. Rick asks Herschel what happened. He says he thinks Glenn was hit. Rick finds Glenn is just frozen behind a dumpster. Walkers begin to devour Sean, and he is left for dead. When they head towards the car they are shot at by Randall from the roof of a building across the street and retreat behind the dumpster again. A truck races up, and the driver, Nate, yells that walkers are heading their way and tells Randall to jump down from the roof. When he does this, he accidentally falls and impales his leg on a fence spike. Nate apologizes to him and leaves him to die, but Rick, Herschel, and Glenn argue about saving him and how to do so. Herschel suggests to put him down from misery. The walkers slowly begin to close in on them, so they decide to try to amputate his leg but do not have enough time. Before the walkers can devour Randall, Rick forces Randall's leg off of the spike, tearing his calf muscle and reducing Randall to tears. Back at the Green farm, Carol goes to check on Daryl, finding many dead squirrels and severed walker ears hanging on a clothesline. Daryl catches her and confronts her. After their argument, Daryl walks away from Carol, and she yells out that she will not let him push her away. In the farmhouse, Beth is still in a state of shock, not being able to react to anything. Maggie tells Andrea a story about Beth finding her birth control pills and how she lied to their father to keep her out of trouble. The next morning, the group starts getting ready to go into town to get Rick, Herschel, and Glenn. Dale tells Andrea that Shane is dangerous and that Shane doesn't want Rick or Herschel to come back so he can be leader, but Andrea doesn't believe him, claiming Shane has done more to keep this group alive than anyone, including Rick, and walks off. The car with Rick, Herschel, and Glenn returns to the farm with Randall blindfolded in the backseat as a hostage. The group argues on what to do with Randall. Rick says they will fix him up and then drop him off to fend for himself, but Shane thinks that he will tell his group where the farm is and this will start a war. Herschel reminds Shane that it is his farm and while he is there he needs to keep his mouth shut. Maggie pulls Glenn aside and asks him if anything is wrong. He explains how her father saved his life and that he froze and could not do anything to help. He had frozen because she told him that she loved him and he was afraid to die because of how it would affect her. She tries to embrace him, but he pushes her away. Outside, Shane and Andrea discuss what the group should do, while Lori tells Rick that Shane thinks the baby is his and that she thinks Shane killed Otis, that he is dangerous, and if Rick doesn't do something about it, they may all be in danger. The end of the 8th and 9th episodes. As soon as this video gets 100 likes and 15 comments, I will release the sequel.